am Mary Jo Coulihan, and I am really honored to be moderating this section for the Colorado Secretary of State and her remarks today. We did invite current Secretary Jenna Griswold to join us, but she declined, indicating that she had scheduling conflicts. So we are really excited to be joined by our Republican candidate for Secretary of State. Please welcome Pam Anderson. Thank you so much, Pam, for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate you being here and your willingness to serve here in Colorado.
Thank you.
So with that, we have one person today, so a little bit change in the format, but it's a good time for Pam to please give us some information. We will start you off with opening remarks, and you do have 3 minutes for that.
Thank you for that. Hello, I am Pam Anderson, your candidate for Colorado Secretary of State. I served as the elected nonpartisan city clerk in Wheat Ridge and 2 terms as the Jefferson County clerk and recorder, representing a very politically diverse county that's very similar to the state of Colorado. I've worked with the states and local governments in leadership and specialize in elections. A little bit about myself personally, I'm married to Jay for 28 years. We raised a couple of kids we're super proud of that graduated from college recently, have jobs, partners we like, are paying their student loans. We feel like we're batting 1,000 right now. And Jay and I are business owners. I also have a master's in public administration. As a county clerk, I applied my business and leadership professional experience to enhance business, improve efficiency, and service to citizens. And as the leader of the Colorado Clerks Association, I worked and achieved nearly every element of improving elections access, transparency, security, and verifiability. I'm proud of our work to ensure that every voter voted a paper ballot. I'm proud that we increased access and made it easier to vote. And I received an award from the National Association of Secretaries of State, the Medallion Award, for my work on election audits that take those paper ballots and validate that the outcomes are correct. I will bring that experience to continue to listen, innovate, and improve our elections, making it easier to register, vote, and more accurate and transparent. I believe strongly this work is a nonpartisan professional position. As the executive director for the Clerks Association, I started to see a disturbing trend from candidates running and then using the office as a political platform to elevate their political profile with false or misleading rhetoric. I saw up close how my opponent diverted over $4 million, half of the COVID funds, to do commercials, while projects to enhance security, safety, and access were rejected or pushed down the road. My opponent takes very polarizing and positions and weaponizes the rules so that candidates and political groups are targeted for their political group affiliation or their beliefs. This has a chilling effect on Coloradans' access to the political process. My opponent has excessive turnover and created instability and a leadership gap in the office. As your next secretary, I will work to restore the broken trust by dedicating my proven record as an experienced leader and a fair referee for all Coloradans. I am humbled and honored by the broad coalition of support from Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliateds that I have, and I will represent the entire state and invest your scarce resources fairly where they were meant to work for you and not elevate my political profile.
Thank you very much. So now we will move into the question and answer portion of this debate. Candidate Anderson, we do have 4 questions for you that were submitted by Club 20 members and our partners today. So you will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. Okay. The first question, at present, unaffiliated voters are only able to serve as election judges if the 2 major parties are unable to fill all of the available spots. Would you support a more active role for unaffiliated voters to serve as election judges and participate directly in the vote counting process?
That's a great question. Yes, I would support that. I also supported the fact that election judges can serve in neighboring counties and places. For example, in Denver, they have trouble finding Republican judges as well. And so you're able to serve across county lines. I think the key importance is that these are citizen elections, your friends and neighbors that are conducting that election, and that we have bipartisan, multi-partisan transparency for our elections, that the security is in place, and that's easily accessible to vote your constitutional rights. And so that kind of transparency, not just for election judges, who then become advocates and ambassadors for the process and can raise the flag if there are any issues happening in the election, but also are watchers as well. And so expanding and making sure that it's representative is something I would support.
Okay. Our second question, the integrity of our elections has been questioned at the state and national levels. If elected, what can you do to help rebuild trust and ensure election integrity, as well as how will you work to prevent voter fraud?
Yes, voting integrity is probably one of the hottest topics, but I have to say that it's not a new topic. Not since Bush v. Gore, our citizens in Colorado have been very concerned that our elections are fair and accurate. It's why, as a county clerk, I work to ensure every voter votes on a paper ballot. I worked to ensure that we had paper ballot audits for the tabulator, for the calculators for those results. I worked to ensure that this was done by your neighbors and the election judges that are taking part in your election, and that the public boards like the Canvas Board and the Audit Board are validating that all of those things are correct. Independent verifiability, making sure that ballots, while anonymous, are public so that the outcome can be independently verified, is what brings trust. Another thing that brings trust is ensuring that your election official is a fair referee. Unlike my opponent, I won't fundraise off of investigations in elections or people that are being investigated for things that they shouldn't have been doing in an election. Unlike my opponent, I won't take polarizing positions on the hardest issues of the day, because those positions will come before me as an initiative, more than likely. This creates mistrust and the perception that you no longer have a fair referee, and I have worked with many, many election officials, both here and around the country, that take that job very seriously as a professional work and restoring that work. Another initiative would be to create a Citizens Academy. It's something we did well at the local level, and we bring people in to learn more about the system. I think we should pay more to an election judge that goes through the Citizens Academy and brings it back to their community to be an ambassador for our process. I also think that we can take some of the best practices we develop at the local level by the innovators at the local level who do the work every single day. Innovations like signature verification audit that I developed, that we can codify and make sure that that's consistently applied across the state. Where we can do better operational audits for voter lists. Our voter list maintenance and modernizing that has come a long way, but there's always work to do. It's my background and an experience that can bring both the confidence, but also a credible and trusted spokesperson and representative that will tell you where we can have faith and where we can always do better.
Thank you. Our third question this afternoon is, many county clerks, especially in our smaller counties, have constraints on their budgets. When the General Assembly mandates new processes and procedures, it can frequently be very difficult for our small counties to implement. How will you help with these mandates and expenses?
So as a county clerk and as the president of the Colorado Clerks Association and a legislative bipartisan co-chair, I advocated for many years against unfunded mandates and fully funding elections. My opponent has broken the trust and the promise to increase the funding for elections, and more than that, has diverted one-time federal funds, more than $4 million to do commercials, instead of sending it to its highest best use, and left gaps where we can shore up our security, where we can provide more access. I would support that 75% of all federal funding goes to where the elections happen, locally. And our state reimbursement, I will work with the legislature as Senate Bill number 1 to increase the reimbursement that has not been increased in over 10 years. You can imagine the cost of elections has not been stagnant for 10 years. And so one of the things that we need to do is make sure we're equitably spreading those resources. As a member of the Bipartisan Election Advisory Committee at the Secretary of State's office over the last several years, it was brought to our attention after the presidential primary that the legislature had funded education and outreach. It was the first presidential primary we had had in 20 years. And so the legislature very wisely said we should tell voters about this and how this is going to work. My opponent, this Secretary of State, was asked, hey, I haven't seen these ads anywhere else in the state, and spent all of those funds in the metro area. There is more to do. There are voters that exist everywhere else. You need to go out into the county to understand. I've worked shoulder to shoulder as the executive director for the Colorado Clerks Association. In 2021, I was a deputy clerk in Chaffee County, standing next to my Democratic colleague in supporting them in their Watcher program against threats. I will be showing up as your Secretary of State and supporting every part of this state.
Thank you. And finally, what new powers do you think the Secretary of State should have, and what responsibilities do you think the office should shed?
Well, I'm a local government person. I was a municipal clerk, I was a county clerk, and our system of federalism, meaning our elections are conducted at the local level, has brought a great deal of strength and trust to our elections as well. Our local election judges trust and see how that works, and collectively that engage and provides a lot of trust. What we see often, for example, in H.R. 1, a federal legislation, is efforts to take away that system of federalization, to take away our ability as county clerks or as a state even to innovate and develop those best practices. When technology changes, how do we test? How do we follow our voters like we have in our model for access, for integrity, for security? And having that type of flexibility is why we have one of the best models of elections and why we will continue to improve. So I will push back on any efforts to remove that type of independence as we've become used to in Colorado and we protect here. I will also ensure that as your next secretary, I won't use my regulatory authority to weaponize my office against citizens or candidates or political groups. I will ensure that there's confidence and communication with the locals. You won't find out about an action from my office in a press release. I will communicate that directly with the locals.
Okay. So as we wrap up, we'd like to hear your final comments and your thoughts, and you have 3 minutes to respond.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I believe that I'm a candidate that has a very clear distinction in vision and philosophy for the Secretary of State's office. I believe that it's a professional position. I believe that my background and experience will bring a trusted referee back to the office. This election is a job interview for me, and it's a performance review for my opponent. The office of the Secretary of State is an extension of my work in leadership, business, and as elections professional for the last 20 years. As your next Secretary of State, I will restore the broken trust and lead as a credible spokesperson to restore a fair referee for our democratic process. I will continue to stand up for voters, preserve your access to your constitutional right, and continue my record of expanding and improving our elections for all voters. I will fight for you without any bias or calculation on how it will benefit or cost me politically. I will eliminate the hyper-partisan rhetoric and restore the broken trust of my opponent by leading and restoring professional ethics to the office. I will support and fight to direct your resources through the entire state, will not divert them to prop up my political career. I will create stability and proven management in the office and fill the leadership vacuum. I will fight to work with you and protect our ability to innovate and preserve local elections and listen to concerns and answer questions from the people of good conscience. I became a better election official by listening to people who had concerns. I will not put my thumb on the scale for any parties or special interest or disqualify myself as a fair referee for your access to the political process. I will fight for the values that we all share as Americans: free, fair, and accurate elections for everyone. Finally, the Secretary of State's office is a destination for me, not a stepping stone. And I will show up. This is my life's work. Thank you to Club 20, and thank you to all of you and those listening for giving us the opportunity to educate you about the candidates.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Pam. We just can't thank you enough for coming today, showing up, and participating in our debates. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.